Hey everybody, it's EJ from Eyedesyn.com, and today we're going to make some silly string using a little overlooked feature in soft body dynamics. Let's learn how. So this is what I was trying to describe, and I'm just decided I'm gonna call this spaghetti from the sky. And what I use to create this is a probably very underused option in the soft body engine, and that is called made of clones. So let me just break down what that key feature does. So let's just go ahead, and what I'm going to do is create a cloner. I'm going to create a sphere, and I'm going to clone this sphere in a grid array. Let's just make this sphere a little bit smaller, say 27. I don't know why I chose 27. I'm just feeling 27 today. So what I'm going to do is just make this sphere, or this grid array, 10 by 10, and just increase the size here so that none of our spheres are overlapping. All right. So what we're going to do now is apply a soft body dynamics tag to this cloner object. Now, typically in soft bodies, you normally don't even mess with clones or anything. You typically just apply it to a sphere or something like that and turn it into more of like a soft, pillowy, jello-like object, and that's via making the springs that basically make the soft body dynamics work made up of polygons and lines. Now, if you're not familiar with soft body dynamics, please check out my intro to soft body dynamics to get a better feel for what this tutorial is going over, because we're kind of building upon that knowledge of just general soft body dynamics. So with soft body dynamics, we have these springs, and basically these springs are what control the gelatinous nature or the soft nature of your geometry. And all of these springs are connected by polygons and lines. But there's also another option where you can actually make clones and build springs between those clones. So what does that mean? Well, if I change this to made of clones, what I can then do is, let me just move this up. And what I need to do to kind of just demonstrate what's going to happen is create a collider object. So what I'm going to do is just create a sphere. And for this to be a collider body, I actually need to, or for it to be recognized in the dynamic simulation, I have to go to simulation tags and just apply a collider body to this. So this is going to just be collided into. It's just going to stay stationary. And if I hit play, so I got my soft body dynamic tag on my cloner, it's made of clones, I'm going to hit play, and you're going to see it just acts like a stiff, rigid board. And that's because we need to go a few more steps to actually prepare this soft body dynamics tag to kind of fully use this made of clones option. So we need to go into our collider tag, or our collision tab right here, and first thing I need to do is actually say I need this soft body dynamics to be applied to the children, which is basically all of these spherical clones. So what I'm going to do is just turn that on to apply tag to children. I need to do one other step to make this made of clones work, and that is to tell this that I need to use the top level of the cloner, basically all those spheres, as individual, or to be treated as individual elements, because right now it's just being treated as one stiff board and not individual spheres. So I'm going to change this to top level, and you can immediately see it's way more wobbly and looks pretty dang cool. Now right now, so what's happening with this is, again, instead of using polygons and lines to create those soft body springs, it's actually making springs between and connecting all of these clones together, which is really cool. So what we can do to make this a little bit more viscous like fluid, like I showed right off the top, is by removing a lot of these structural springs. So basically, these three types of springs here, the structural, shear, and flexion, I go a little bit over them in the intro to soft body dynamics tutorial I did previously. But basically, the more springs, the more stiff the objects are going to be. So if I remove springs, say just remove springs in the shear and flexion, you're going to see this is going to have a lot more give, and this is going to act more like cloth. And this is pretty much what we're going for here. So we have a lot of structural springs but no shear and no flexion. We got this really nice fluid cloth type of effect. So this is kind of getting close to what I wanted, the feel that I want for like fluid. So let's just go ahead and what I need to do, instead of using a grid array, I actually need something that's going to emit these spheres and create more like a like water from a water faucet or something like that. So what I'm going to do is create an emitter and actually emit these spheres. So what I'm going to do is go from grid array to object and clone spheres, these soft body spheres, onto the emitter. So what you're going to see now, and I can get rid of my collider sphere here. So I got my emitter right here, and you're going to see it's going to emit all these clones that are connected by those soft body springs, right? So what I'm going to do is, to create my spaghetti from the sky, I'm just going to rotate my emitter, move it up, and now these spheres are just going to drop, and since they're connected by those springs, they're going to kind of go all over the place, because you can see that all these spheres are all over the place. There's a lot of points being emitted, a lot of particles being emitted, and what I'm going to do is just bring this emitter above the cloner, because in the hierarchy we actually need stuff to be emitted, and then we can actually clone onto it later. Just the level of priority here. And what I want to do, so this is a nice steady stream, is go to my emitter options and make the emitter size way smaller. So now everything's just kind of being emitted from a tiny, tiny emitter right there. And you can see that things are still looking kind of goofy. And that's because we have too many particles being emitted at once. So what I need to do is bring that down, and I think what I need to do even further is remove more of those springs, because right now there's too many springs and these spheres are kind of bunching up together. So what I'm going to do is just bring the structural down to 1, and you're going to see that this is way more viscous. And I can actually go up to my emitter here and try to up this a little bit. So as long as these spheres aren't bumping into each other, I can up this as much as I want. You can see that if I bring the birth rate up too much, you're going to see spheres kind of bump into each other right from the get-go, and it creates this kind of wavy kind of look, which actually, for liquid, you might be wanting that. But I'm just going to make sure that this is low enough that none of these spheres are getting emitted and colliding into one another. So now it's a nice, except for that little first bit, we have this nice stream of spheres. And let's just up the speed a little bit too, just to try to prevent any spheres from getting collided into right off the bat. That's looking good. Let's see if I can get away with upping this one more particle per second. And I think that's looking good. So we have a steady stream of spheres. Let's go ahead and create our disk to act as a floor, so we can have all of these spheres that are connected by this the soft body springs collide into the ground. So let's go to Simulation, Collider Body, and you can see right away that all these spheres are connected by a single spring, so they're basically creating like a bead necklace or something like that, where they're all connected together, and as they fall on the floor, they still maintain that springy connection. So this is exactly what we want. Now, the only thing is that we need to create a dynamic spline from this that we can then sweep geometry onto to create our little spaghetti piece. So these spheres are going to be a very important part because they have the dynamics applied to them, they have the springs connected, and they're going to help us generate a dynamic spline based off this. So what I'm going to do is to connect all these spheres together and try to create a spline off of them, I'm going to go ahead and create a tracer object. Now what I'm going to do is I need to place the cloner in that trace link, and if I turn off my cloner there, the visibility, you can see that it's actually tracing the path of all of these spheres. So we're getting all this pretty cool, like generative, almost looks like tree branches or something like that. But I actually don't want to do that. I just want to connect those objects. So just like the cloner is connected by those soft body springs, I want to connect those objects together and create one uniform spline. You can see that we're generating this kind of chunky, rigid spline, and that's because I need to add some intermediate points to smooth that out. So I'm just going to go and choose adaptive, and let's just choose cubic to kind of smooth that out, and then I can bring the angle down. You can see as I bring the angle of this down, it's going to create more points and smooth out that spline. So now we have one strand of spaghetti, and it's got all the soft body springs created by all these clones being connected by these springs. I want to cover one important thing because this will not work if the tracer is actually below the cloner. And what I'm going to show you is just turn off the cloner. You're going to see that the tracer is just emitting and it's just going straight through the ground. So it's just because of the order of operations here that the tracer needs to be above the cloner for this to work. So very important. All right, so let's go ahead and we have our nice dynamics like spaghetti spline. What we're going to do to create some geometry off of this is to use a sweep object. So let's go to sweep, and we're going to place our tracer spline under that sweep, and then all we need to do is define a profile spline that we can sweep along this tracer, and I'm just going to use a circle for that. So how the sweep object works is you need to have the profile spline first and then the object to sweep it along. So the circle is way big, so I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit. And you can see now we have our nice little spaghetti. Now the key to trying to prevent this geometry from intersecting with one another is to make sure that the radius is the same size of the radius of the sphere that we use to clone on. So let's just do like 24. And you can see we still have a lot of intersecting. So what we can do is go into, let's just turn off the sweep there. Let's try to prevent these spheres from kind of overlapping and creating this overlapping spaghetti string there. So what we can do in our options is, number one, what I want to do is kind of dampen the spring movement. So I don't want it so springy. So I'm just going to bring up the dampening fairly high to say 500, and you can see that now it looks a little bit less viscous. And what I can do to even help that a little bit more so it's not spreading out so much is by upping the friction values on both the clones so they more stick to each other. So it's a little bit more sticky than fluid and viscosity and sliding all over the place. And I can also up the friction on my floor object here. So I'll just up that to say 90 and maybe just get rid of bounce altogether. So there will be no bouncing, and you can see that with the friction increased on both the spheres and the floor, you can see this is a little bit more piling up. And if we turn on our sweep object and turn off hide our cloner, you can see this is looking a lot more like what we want. We still have a lot of intersecting going on, so we need to work a little bit more to help prevent that. And the one thing we can do to prevent that is to use and utilize this size increment on our shape field here. So typically it tries to create a nice little barrier or collision shape, and we can actually grow that to create kind of like a buffer. to grow the shape of those collider objects. So we can up this size increment. If I crank this up very high, you can see that our clones are going to stay 24 centimeters. It's going to give a 24 centimeter buffer to each other. And you can see that's way too much. So maybe just a value of 5. So all these spheres that are being emitted will have a buffer of 5 centimeters, a little force field kind of thing around it to prevent clones from getting too close to each other, and therefore preventing our sweep object geometry from overlapping each other as well. So what we can do to make this a little bit more accurate and try to help prevent more intersecting is by going, and I'm going to hit Command D, and that's going to go into our project settings, and I'm just going to navigate to my dynamics options here, and I'm going to go to the expert tab. And what I'm going to do is up the steps per frame, and basically this is going to make a more accurate simulation, but it's also going to increase the calculation time. So I'm just going to change this from 15 to 30, and what that's going to do is help prevent intersecting and just be a more accurate simulation. So I think that's looking a lot better. We're having less and less intersections. Let me just make this composition longer, say 300 frames, and really let the spaghetti fall from the sky here. And you're gonna see that our spaghetti just stopped, and that's because our emitter by default has a stop emission at 150. So I can just make this emit throughout our whole timeline, our project length of 300, and this will just keep emitting here. Alright, so one more thing I want to do to help tamper down let's just move this up a little bit more so it falls a little bit more so we can get this piled high, get that spaghetti piled high. I want to dampen the movement here even more, and I can use this linear dampening to do this as well. So it'll be a little bit more, it'll feel a little bit more heavy, and it's all about the type of dynamics you want. If you want this more viscous, you would definitely want to lower the friction values and all that stuff. But if you want it more, just a little bit more like toothpaste where it's very sticky, feels very sticky, you would want to up the friction on the cloner and also do a little bit of linear dampening, but not too much. So say 45, and you can see that really tampens down. You can really feel the sticky weight of our spaghetti here. So that's looking really good. One other thing I want to cover is in the tracer, we have a few different types of spline interpolation. So I chose cubic, and I just want to kind of go through what all of these look like because they totally change the way these are the splines represented. So I choose cubic just because it's a little bit smoother. Some people may think that a Bezier looks a little bit better. You can do a Kima, or you can do B-spline, which really smooths everything out. But you can really tell the difference. I mean, the B-spline and the Bezier is completely different. And cubic just kind of smooths things out a bit. But let's just stick with Bezier for the heck of it. So we got this going on. What I want to do, as you can see with this emits, we just have a chopped off little noodle, I guess you would say. But let's just round this out. And we can do this by creating a fillet cap. And you can see that's given a nice little bevel. Let's constrain and let's just round out the edges here by upping the steps and just increase the radius a little bit, so like 23, and I'll just do the same on the top cap there, you can see, and just give it enough rounding that we have nice rounded edges. You can do a create single object and you'll see that that'll get rid of that UV little hitch right there. And so now we have a nice rounded noodle looking good. So what we can do is, this is kind of going slow. What we can do is jump back into our Dynamics project settings by hitting Command D, and we can actually go to the General tab and up the time scale. And what that's going to do is speed up our simulation. So this is going to move a lot faster. You can even do like 300. But you can see that because these spheres are being emitted, there's a large gap between them as they're being emitted. So if you up the time scale, you're going to want to go to the emitter and emit more of these spheres as time goes on. So maybe change this to 15. Let's see what that looks like. So now we have a lot of spheres being emitted to connect and make that nice, smooth spline. We really have some spaghetti piling up really fast here. Now you can keep like going further with this and maybe create a collider body. Maybe you want to fill up like some brain geometry. So you'd go and create a sphere. Let's just go back to frame 0. Create a sphere. Let's do a hemisphere. And let's just turn this upside down. So we're going to fill a bowl of spaghetti. And we're just going to go ahead. And so this can collide into this. We're going to go and create a collider body on this as well. Let's go and just so it recognizes this as a hollow shape, we need to change the shape from automatic, which is the fastest but least accurate, and it does not take into account holes or concave shapes. So we need to just change that to a more accurate shape, and that is static mesh. That'll actually take into account this little hole, this little concave shape. And let's see what this looks like. So we're going to fill up this bowl. Let's hide the visibility here. There we go. So now we're like filling up this bowl. Let's actually turn on, let's go to our sphere. Turn on X-ray so we can see inside. And we can adjust this sphere to be a little bit smaller. So we can fill up a little bit faster. So there we go. We got a bowl of spaghetti getting filled up. And hopefully this helps you make some really fun compositions with this, some fun animations using the spaghetti from the sky, and have a lot of fun with this. Alright, so that's how you can create some silly string or spaghetti from the sky using some soft body dynamics using the clones option. So if you have any questions on anything I covered in this tutorial, be sure to leave them in the comments sections. And if you make anything, any kind of silly string or whatever you want to call it, be sure to share it with me on Twitter, on my website, eyedesyn.com. I'd love to see what you guys are making out there. And if you like this tutorial, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate that. And I really appreciate all of you out there watching this tutorial. I'll see you all in the next one. All right, everybody. Bye.